Musicians Talk Show with Dallas Dwight and Matt Tolley.
Yeah, where you hear like the...
you hear the setup of the
amp
we're getting ready to play.
in.
Exactly. Click, click.
And then...
Right. I love
don't know why I went into Kickstart My Heart, but... Anyway, have you seen The Joker?
I've not, but I want to. I got a date planned. I'm going to go see it.
Okay, a date like...
somebody to go see it with.
Okay, got it. So that's the date. You didn't like...
No, not an actual date on the calendar. No.
Which would be impressive because it's not out then.
No, I just have a mission to go see it.
Okay,
especially
cool.
since I've heard lots of good stuff about it. So.
Very good stuff. I've seen it and I've nothing but amazing things to say. I feel like though after you see it, you kind of need to sit in a dark room and just kind of think about it for like a day.
That's what people say. People say it makes you think.
It's a lot to take in, man. It's dark. It's not horror at all, of course, but it's like dark in a really creepy, like real way.
Yeah.
It was uncomfortable for sure. Yeah. But at any rate, this is the Musicians Talk Show,
who do we have today?
85.
Oh, this is a good one.
And we have a guest for you. First guest in a while. Who is it, Matt?
It's Ari Herstand.
Ari Herstand, and we are super excited for this one. We just finished the chat, and we're recording this intro right after we finished it.
Yep.
And I can tell you, if you are an indie musician, if you want to be an indie musician, this is one you don't want to miss. He's got a new book. Well, kind of. It's the second edition of his first book coming out November 5th. The book is called How to Make It in the New Music Business. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Here it is.
And just so you know about like a little bit about Ari, like Forbes labels him the poster child of DIY music, and that's a little bit of a stretch because obviously nobody does it all by themselves. We talk about it in the show. Nobody does it all by themselves, but he is all for trying to do it yourself and do whatever you can by yourself, and also how you can lean on people, and like he just gives so many good examples. That's what I love about it. It's just like he explains his story because he was a musician and is a musician, and he explains how he did it and went through it all, and then obviously like just how other people have done it. Tons of examples about artists that we know and love and stuff like that. So.
I feel like this book is kind of a battle cry of like hope.
It is.
If you're a musician that feels like, I can't do it, dude, this sucks. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to run my Facebook. I don't know how to get fans. Nobody's coming to my shows.
Right.
Read this book. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
So it's October 14th when this comes out, at least.
Yep.
2019. And it's available for pre-order. It doesn't officially come out until November 5th. I've already gotten mine.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw the email come out saying it was available, I was like, hell yeah. I mean, I read the first one. I have the audiobook, the Kindle version, and the hardback.
Yep. So. It's safe to say you're a fan of this.
I'm a fan. Yeah.
It is. But I mean, there's nothing to not be a fan about. It is an amazing piece of literature. If you're a musician, if this is what you're doing, I mean, I don't see what piece of literature is more important than this one.
I'm such a nerd for the business stuff anyway, but the way he breaks it down, the way he's a millennial like me, he's in that age range. He knows how to communicate with those people,
right?
And how he tackles all the new topics. I tell him early on in the podcast, the key word in the title is new music business.
Yep.
Because there's tons of books on the music business, but there's not really one on the new music business. And that's why his is so powerful.
And it's ever changing, which is why the second edition is coming out. It's 3 years after the first edition.
And already so much has changed.
Oh, yeah.
And there's other music books that haven't been updated since 2002.
Right.
It's like, dude, like this is not even worth reading,
Exactly. Because when you read about it, and what was the one you were just telling me? It's like got Rhapsody. They're talking about. Yeah. It's like Rhapsody's not a thing anymore.
The book I'm reading, it was copywritten in 2005. It's about music supervision. And, they're like talking about like, you got to get your song on Rhapsody. It's just like, dude, this is just, I'm done with this.
So that's a wasted chapter right there. It's like, this chapter is all about Rhapsody. So that's the nice thing about this is, and I'm glad he's updating it as frequently as he is.
Right.
3 years.
I hope in another 3 years we see the third edition.
3 years is a good number, I think, too, because, and he talks about in the episode, he talks about how where he added, and what he
like what changed.
Where he got his, exactly what changed and where he got information from is like people let him know, like, hey, this, is changing.
For example, Vine's gone.
Exactly.
And he referenced that in the first one. So, I mean, all sorts of things like that. But I can't wait for you to hear it straight from him, not from us.
Yes.
So here it is, episode 85 of the Musicians Talk Show with Ari Herstand. Well, Ari, I wanted to say first, thank you so much for doing this. I speak for Matt and I both when I say, we're mega fans of your work, dude. I made your first book required reading for my band.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you.
I don't know that they read it.
Yeah.
That's always
I'm
a struggle,
honestly not
right?
sure
That's
that
the
they
challenge.
can read sometimes, but
hey.
Oh, the musician struggle.
Yeah.
Reading's hard, man.
Yeah.
The audiobook, though. The audiobook.
Yeah. Exactly, right? There's no excuses. I recorded the audiobook.
Right, exactly.
Go on a long drive, put that baby on, listen to it.
So the first thing I wanted to start with is, can you just give us the quick rundown of what your book, which is titled How to Make It in the New Music Business, is all about? I mean, what's kind of the thesis statement there?
Sure. Well, the thesis statement is that it is possible to, and actually very feasible, and it is happening for musicians to make decent livings, good livings, pursuing a music career. And it's really kind of a response to just kind of the general, unfortunately, the general consensus that is in kind of our country and in the world, that pursuing a music career is kind of a very risky endeavor, and also that it's just not possible and you need lucky breaks. And, maybe 15 years ago, you kind of needed a few lucky breaks, and you needed some crucial, essential gatekeepers to let you in the door and actually give you permission to have a music career. But what we've seen over the last 15 years, with the internet and everything that it brings, is that it's not only possible to pursue a successful music career, we're actually seeing it on a pretty wide scale. And every year, we're hearing about more and more musicians who are figuring things out in their own unique way very successfully and having very successful careers. So, this is a response to everyone who says, well, a music career is just not possible, or it's too difficult, or it's, you need a lucky break, or either you're going to be a superstar or a starving musician. And that's, I attempt to disprove that myth in the book, and really share the stories of how literally thousands of musicians are succeeding today in extremely unique ways that didn't really exist sometimes 5 or even 10 years ago. And really just share that it's not just possible, it's actually happening, and here are the musicians that are doing it, and check out what they're doing. And then not just tell their stories, but show how you can do it as well.
Right. Yeah, the gatekeepers falling to the wayside is definitely something we see now, and it's easier than ever now for artists to be able to stream their own music, do whatever they want. Everything is available now, whereas 10 years ago,
absolutely,
it was just totally inaccessible.
No, for sure. And what we're also starting to see, which is actually really cool, is there are some independent musicians, to buck the gatekeepers and the labels and everything like that. And they are succeeding on a very wide, massive scale. We all know about Chance the Rapper a few years ago, who kind of shot up without a label, but also more recently, like Wolfpack, this funk band, they just sold out Madison Square Garden without a manager or a label. Damn. And so we're starting to see more and more of these kinds of artists that are succeeding on these gigantic scales that traditionally were reserved for those in the system, those that had the support of the infrastructure of the music industry, the major labels, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I got to imagine the labels are kind of scared by that.
I mean, it's definitely a brand new world for them. And I think what they've started to realize is that their traditional way of operating just doesn't work anymore. And traditional, I should say, in the sense of what they were doing kind of at the the late 90s, early 2000s, because starting with, around early 2000s, 2001, 2, 3, they were in kind of a free fall once Napster came out, and they didn't really understand how to monetize the internet age. Then they finally did when they bought stock into Spotify and basically gave Spotify permission to launch in the States. They collectively, the major labels, owned around 25% of Spotify. And so when Spotify went public, they cashed out millions. So they're successful again. But also streaming is proven to be has proven to be so lucrative for everyone, for the labels, but for the indie artists as well. So the labels are starting to figure out, and I think that there's a place for everyone. So the major label their whole business model will always be superstardom. That's just how they're set up.
Right.
So the major labels are always going to be looking for superstars, and that's fine. Like, nothing against the major labels. This is their business model, and that's just what they want to focus on, and that's fine. I'm not interested in that business model, and I don't really care. That none of those kinds of stories don't really interest me. And it's like, when Billboard for years and Rolling Stone and Spin and everyone else was just talking about like how many records Adele sold and like Taylor Swift's Love Life and yada yada yada. Like, none of that concerned me. I didn't care about that because like that doesn't really show how indie artists are succeeding and making a living. And so like, yeah, the labels are going to have that business model where they're going to focus on superstars, but there is a new business model where independent musicians are actually succeeding on a very incredible way right now too. And so, I don't think the labels are ever going to die necessarily. But unfortunately, because they have fucked over a lot of artists through the years, and we hear about those stories every day. And so, yeah, like they're hopefully they're growing a conscience and collectively with like kind of the younger people who are entering into the industry now on that label level, they're going to be a little bit, I should say, maybe kinder to musicians. But then again, there are contracts in place, and they're not probably going to change that drastically, I don't think. But that being said, there's a place for everyone in the industry, including the major labels.
So that brings me to the second edition, which is coming out really soon. What's the date on that again?
Yeah. November 5th. So depending on when you're listening to it, it may already be out.
Well, this is actually coming out tomorrow,
a wide
so
release.
Plenty of time.
Oh, okay. Great.
So November 5th,
Nice.
we'll get some promo done for you. So what's new in the second edition? I mean, why should people go for the new edition?
Sure. So I basically so as you can imagine, a lot has changed in the last 3 years since the book came out, since the first edition came out. So I updated stuff in nearly every section of the book. I kind of read the book and kind of redlined, almost every page, and changed, some sections, little things here and there, like numbers have shifted and changed. But I completely rewrote the social media chapter, for instance. Okay. As you can imagine, that all has shifted in the last 3 years. Right. I also added about 50 new pages, 50 pages of new information, new philosophies from the feedback that I got from the first edition. And some people would write in with questions, and by write in, I mean like DM me on Instagram right. with questions, things that they didn't quite understand, and or things that needed clarifying. And so that was actually very helpful. And everyone who kind of wrote in, whether it was a question or a comment or a typo, right. I had a running list of everything. And so when I went in to write the second edition, I kind of pulled up this list, my notes, and I addressed everything. So there's new philosophies that I came up with that I wanted to highlight, and new stories. So a lot of I learned about all these new artists that were succeeding in really interesting ways. Instagram musicians weren't really a thing back in 2016, and now they are. Spotify playlists were a thing back then, but now entire industries have popped up within the Spotify ecosystem, basically. And so I showcase Spotify playlists, but also I talk about direct marketing, which direct marketing, just kind of talking about how people are utilizing Facebook and Instagram ads to find their audiences. And so that wasn't really happening in a wide way because, for one, Instagram didn't really have advertising in 2016, and now it does. And Facebook, it was still kind of growing, and people were figuring out how it's used. So, I should say the skeleton of the book has remained. So the thesis has stayed the same. But I tell a bunch of new stories. I update things in every chapter and every section, and then add a bunch of new information.
Excellent.
That's awesome. So what drew me to your book instantly was one word in the title, and that word is new. So, I mean, there's tons of books on the music business, but yours stands out by being about the new music business. So what do you think is the biggest difference between kind of the old and the new industries?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the old industry, there was really just one path to success. You had to get signed. You had to go on tour. You had to get hits on the radio. Like that was pretty much it. And success was valued very simply. It was valued in whether you sold a gazillion records. And if you sold a gazillion records, you were successful. If you didn't, you were a failure. And that was pretty much it. It was pretty clear, cut and dry. That was it. The new music business is drastically different. There is no one way to make it in the new music business anymore. There are 100 ways to make it in the new music business. And success in the new music business is not valued on whether you sell a gazillion records anymore. And it's not valued whether you even need to go on tour. I mean, there are some very successful artists. I highlight one in the second edition. He's this hip hop artist named Lucidius. And he's making over $20,000 a month just on streaming revenue. And he has never toured. He's only played maybe 5 shows in his entire life. And that's possible. And, you know, we were seeing YouTubers, a good friend of mine, Peter Hollins, he started on YouTube. Then he kind of transitioned, or I should say evolved to include Facebook and Instagram and now just the internet. And he has a very large fan base as well. And he has no interest in touring. He has a family. He lives a quiet life in Eugene, Oregon. And so there are ways to build a music career now in the new music business that makes sense for you. And there's no right or wrong. That's the other thing that that is so different from the new music business is there is no right or wrong. No one can define success for you. Success is extremely personal, and there's no one way to make it, but also you can't allow somebody to tell you, oh, you have to do this. You have to do this. If you want to be successful, you must do this. That is incorrect in the new music business. You have to do what makes sense for you. Right. That's it. And because there are people, you know, personally, I love performing. I love touring. I need to, that's where I thrive. I thrive on stage. I thrive with an audience, the energy of the room. I love that. And so for my YouTuber friends and my Instagram musician friends and stuff like that, who don't really have any interest in performing or touring, you know, that doesn't make sense for them. But at the same time, like I tried the YouTuber thing like 5 years ago, because I'm in LA and a lot of the YouTubers are here. And I like teamed up with a few of them and did some videos. I'm like, it was a full-time thing. Like, you know, they turn shit around real quickly. They put out a video every week. And I'm like, man, this does not inspire me. I don't like doing this. I don't want to do the YouTube thing because it's just not inspiring. So I didn't. I did a few of the videos. I'm like, ugh, this sucks. Right, yeah. For me personally, like I didn't like doing that. So that it didn't make sense for me. I didn't want to do that. There's nothing wrong with that though. Like it made sense for them. And that's how they built up their audience and their fan base. And that's what they love to do. So, you know, God bless them. Go do it. Like that's awesome. And so that's like the biggest difference is that, you know, there's no right or wrong. There's no one way to do it. And so if anyone says, oh, you have to do this if you want to succeed, they are full of shit, and hand them my book.
Yeah. So you mentioned, I think it was Lucidius making so much money through streaming, which brings me to the topic of people have this, or they seem to have this really big misconception of how much money you can make streaming. Somebody posted this, I guess it was a little meme on Instagram or something, and it made me so mad because it said, you know, 6 million streams, $50, you know, trying to make a funny joke about it or whatever. And I went and did the math, and it was closer to like $30,000. So I was like, come on, man. Like you're just spreading stuff that's just not even true. Right. Like, I mean,
well, yeah, no, you're totally right. And unfortunately, there have been a lot of misconceptions, and there have been a lot of misinformation, I should say, spread like that. Someone sees a meme like that and they think that it's fact. I mean, we're in the era of fake news, and it's just like whatever we see in our Facebook or Instagram feed, we believe as fact, unfortunately.
Then you go tell your 10 friends, and now they all think it's like, it's a mess.
Right. So, unfortunately, that thing. But the other thing is like, there are a lot of different kinds of royalties that are paid out in the streaming era, and a lot of people just don't realize all the different kinds of royalties. So, there was about 5-6 years ago when streaming was really starting to pop, and the songwriters would come out. Famous songwriters would come out and say, man, my song got streamed, 10 million times and I only made $7 or whatever, bullshit statement or whatever. And the thing is like, yes, that sounds crazy. I mean, it wasn't that. It was like, I think it was like 7 million times and they only made like $1,000 or something like that. And when I actually looked deeper into what they were talking about, I'm like, oh, yeah, that actually makes complete sense, because what they were really talking about was on Pandora, which was internet radio. They weren't talking about any kind of master streaming royalties. What they were talking about were the performance royalties that were paid out from their performing rights organization, which was a lot smaller and a much tinier piece than what streaming, interactive streaming like Spotify pays. And not only that, they were 3 other songwriters on the song. So whatever money was paid out was split 4 ways. I'm like, okay, this makes complete sense. These were radio royalties that were paid out from their performing rights organization that didn't account for the sound recording royalties from Pandora. This wasn't artist royalties because they weren't the artist; they were just a songwriter, and it was radio. It wasn't like interactive streaming. And if you really break down internet radio, okay, 7 million streams sounds like a lot. But let's talk about KCRW, which is an on-air, one of the it's kind of the NPR affiliate radio stations in Los Angeles, and they play indie music, and KCRW here in LA has 550,000 weekly listeners. 550,000 weekly listeners. So let's say your song to reach those 7 million numbers, basically, your song really only needs to get spun on KCRW. That's like 14 times, and so it's like, if you think about it, that your song only got spun on one radio station 14 times, let's say over the course of 2 months for like this pay period, then you're like, oh wow, that's actually not that much. Okay, you got, a lot of people get spun on their local radio station a few times here and there over the course of a few months or whatever, and they don't expect to get paid millions of dollars for those few spins that on their local radio station they got it. And so when you really think about it, it's like, wow, yeah, okay, you got 7 million streams on Pandora, sweet, sounds like a lot, you think you should get paid a lot, but really, if you get played a few times on your local radio station, and which is like equivalent to 7 million ears hearing your song through their radio, you don't expect to get paid millions. So like, really, these numbers, unfortunately, numbers are getting thrown all around, all over the place, and there's just a lot of misinformation, a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah, it seems like they grab onto the shocking headline too.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
It's exactly why they grabbed onto his 7 million streams. That's why that was the headline, is because it sounds so absurd. Yeah. But then when you go down to the real details, it's like, oh, well, it's not absurd, but the way they make it sound is, and then everybody clicks on it. It's clickbait.
Right.
Yeah. What I was about to say was everything you just said, Ari, does not sound like a cute headline. You know what I mean? Right. Like, that's not going to get any clicks like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just like you said, it's almost fake news in a way.
It is. It's the era of fake news.
Right. And it is a grabby headline, and that my song got streamed 7 million times and I only made $1,000, blah, 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 blah. So then that headline gets shared and no one actually clicks through to maybe read the article, where maybe they do break it down in the article because it's just not grabby.
Exactly.
And so, yes, when we are in the era of clickbait and where the blogs are getting paid based on how many clicks they're getting, unfortunately, you have to showcase those kinds of headlines that are going to get the clicks.
Yep.
And then it's just the information, just misinformation gets spread.
Yeah. And so many times it's so easy to just be a quote author or journalist now that, I mean, so many times the article itself is incorrect. I remember when, do you guys remember the summer that Pokemon Go was out and it was really big?
Yep.
Yeah.
They had, all apps have a number called daily active users, which is how many people open the app every day.
Right.
And they were losing, or they lost, I think, 10 million daily active users. That was the statistic. Okay. And this headline said, Pokemon Go is losing 10 million users daily. And I was like, okay, well, we only had 50, so 5 days and they're at zero? Like, what are you talking about? Dude? Like, it's just so wrong. And I mean, people click these things and are like, dude, did you know? And it's just like, it's so wrong. Like,
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the other thing is like in this era where anyone can have a blog, myself included, and there's no like journalistic standards or editors. Like, exactly. I've written a lot of articles on various publications, whether it's Ari's Take or Digital Music News or Music Connection Magazine or whatever, that were not there was no editor. I literally published it myself. And, I do my due diligence, at least I try to, and I try to do the research and make sure that is completely factually correct. Like I take great pride in that. And, if anyone points out an error, there's an error in anything, like I'll correct it and I'll make a correction. Like I try to hold myself personally to very high journalistic standards, but I don't have to. Like there's no law.
Yeah, there's
like,
no backlash. There's no backlash other than just people being upset with the writer or whoever.
And sometimes going the other direction gets you more clicks anyway.
Right.
So it's like,
that's, it still pays off. Yeah.
And I think Ari, you might be the exception to that, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, unfortunately, I
wish
know.
everyone else would do that too, but
but that's the thing is because like anyone can have a blog, anyone can write, anyone can publish, and then it just gets shared as fact when it doesn't need it. There's just no journalistic standards. So that's why I would say it's really important to check the source, to check the writer, like who is the writer of I always look at who's the writer on every article I read, and of course the publication, like who's the publication. Like I know some publications, like the New York Times or whatever, the big ones, they have very extremely high journalistic standards. So when you're going to read these, like, oh, this was fact checked, this went through editors, they have a very high standard, yada yada yada. Whereas like if something is published on Joe Schmo's blog or whatever, like, okay, it's probably just Joe Schmo hitting publish on his WordPress site, and like you have to like take it with a grain of salt.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So what are the most common mistakes you see artists make in their careers?
I mean, that's a great question. I would say the biggest mistake that most artists make is that they start their music career before they're ready. And they put the cart before the horse in the sense they don't hone their craft enough to the point where they are ready to actually start a music career.
Right.
In this era, and this is new to the new music business, because in the old music business,
you wouldn't get picked up.
The one. Exactly. Yes. The one benefit of the system, the infrastructure, and the gatekeepers was if you weren't ready, you wouldn't get signed. No one would. They wouldn't greenlight your record or your career. Now it's a blessing and a curse that we are all able to get our music out on Spotify. It's Beyonce and it's me and you. And it's like, and it's the same platform. It's like, so you can listen to Beyonce on there and you can listen to me and you.
Yeah, so it becomes super saturated,
Right. And so, unfortunately, Spotify released a statistic last year that there's 40,000 new songs on Spotify every single day, distributed to Spotify every single day. 40,000 songs a day.
How many of those are good?
Right. That's exactly. I was going to say, what's the percentage?
A tiny percent of those are good. Yeah. But that's the thing. It's just like, the bar of quality of what is now out there is so low, and there is no bar.
I was going to say there is no bar. It's just
like DistroKid and CD Baby and TuneCore. They don't. There's no standards for what like the standards for what you need to release a song is so minimal. They're not listening to your music. It's like is your artwork clear and does it meet the standards of like Apple and Spotify and like, is there actual sound coming out of your wave file? Like that's pretty much it.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the example in your first book of that. I guess it was a funk band, maybe Detroit, somewhere up there, where they put out the album of Silence.
Yeah.
Yep. That was Wolfpack actually. So what's funny, Wolfpack, who sold out Madison Square Garden.
That's so funny.
I know, right? Like they got on everyone's radar. I should say they got on the mainstream media's radar with this record. Everyone wrote about it. They released 10 songs of silence, of 30 seconds of each track was 30 seconds because that was Spotify's baseline of when you're going to get paid of just silence. And they told their fans to just stream their record overnight while they slept. And it was brilliant. Smart. So smart. There's like, okay, well, this is the system. I guess we can play your game, and they played the game, and but that's the thing. There's like so then Spotify changed their terms of service. They're like, oh yeah, this is not acceptable anymore. We don't allow this. We didn't think that we had to write this in our terms, but now we do, obviously. So now it's in our terms.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits too. I was going to say about the new music business is that there's loopholes and there's things that are changing so fast that you're going to be able. There's things to exploit in certain areas, and you can really capitalize on the fact that it's a growing and changing thing. And that's what they did.
Well. Absolutely, and that's what we're seeing. That was a stunt. That was a stunt that worked for them. But what we're starting to see is that the artists who are succeeding in a big way are the ones that where everyone is going right, they go left. Right. And they are trying new things. They're getting creative with the tools that they have available, that we all have available to us. And they are utilizing tools in a way that in a different way, but a way that makes sense to them. And that kind of goes back to the what I was saying before about how you have to do what makes sense for you. It's really utilizing your strengths, and my strengths are going to be different from your strengths, and my weaknesses are going to be different from your weaknesses. And so you can't structure your career exactly the way that I've structured my career, and vice versa, because we have different strengths and weaknesses. And so you have to focus on strengths and weaknesses. The reason that Wolfpack is so successful, they have good music. Okay, there's a lot of bands with good music. It's not really about the music, just about the music. Right. The reason they're so successful is because Jack, who's in the band, one of the founders of the band, he's really good at video editing, and he has a really cool focused artistic eye in terms of his vision for how he wants his videos and his aesthetic for the whole band to look. And he's hilarious. He's like a trained improv artist and comedian, and so he creates memes and he creates these videos, and he taps into this musical nerddom because they're all music nerds from University of Michigan, and so he like puts out this lighthouse hum and foghorn hum that's just like to all the other music nerds around the world is like, hey, we're over here, you're a music nerd, we're a music nerd, and he showcases on that. And so it's like that's his strength, and every band has different strengths. You can't copy that. Like you can't replicate that to a T, but you can take inspiration from that. Right. Absolutely. And so we can all take inspiration. But I do want to go back to what you're like, what we were talking about before when you asked me, like, what's the biggest mistake and mistake that bands make, just to kind of button up that point, because I think it's really important for musicians to understand. You have to get great first. Like the music has to be great first before you start your career. Like I think, with this book, and that's something that I actually hit much harder in the second edition of the book, because I didn't really talk about that as much in the first edition. And this was kind of, people would come to me and they'd be like, oh, Ari, I followed all the steps in the book and I did everything you said. It's just, and nothing's happening. People aren't showing up to my shows. I'm not getting any streams. And I'm like, huh. And they show me their business plan. I'm like, yeah, it all looks great. Like you did a really great job. And then I dig into the music. I actually listen to their music, or I go to their show. I'm like, I know why no one is paying attention to you and no one is coming to your shows. You're not ready yet. Like your music is not at a competitive level where people want to pay attention. With so much noise and so much music coming out, if you're not great, you're not going to turn heads. People don't have time for mediocrity. There is so much music out there. You need to become great. And And great, obviously, is somewhat subjective, but at some point it's not really. Like, we all, like the professionals in the industry know what is mediocre and what is great. Yep. And, there's a level where it's like, sure, if you don't, it's very clear, like, okay, you don't know how to play your instrument. Okay. Clearly, if you're trying to perform on stage and you can't play your instrument, obviously you're not ready. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty black and white and pretty easy. But then there's nuances, and it's a sliding scale all the way up to, like, you don't have to be the greatest guitar player in the world to get on stage and perform. You just have to be great at what you're trying to do. So, like, there are singer-songwriters who are not great at guitar, and that's okay. They just have to be great at what they're trying to do. And if they're a singer-songwriter, then they have to write great songs. And I love this. I talk about this in the first edition. This singer-songwriter, Andy Grammer, he's an acoustic pop singer-songwriter kind of thing, pop artist, and he writes 100 songs for every record that he puts out, and then whittles it down to, like, the best 10, 12 songs for the record. And because he's a songwriter, he's a singer-songwriter, and so he knows it's all about the songs. And he's not like, we all think, like, I just need to write 10 songs and record them, and then my record's done, and I'll just record the first 10 songs I write. That's what I did on my first record, and no one paid attention, no one cared. I'm like, wait, what's going on? It's because the songs weren't very good. It's just like, if you're a songwriter, you got to write a bunch of songs. Like, on Andy Grammer's second album, he actually wrote, and he told me the story, he wrote 100 songs before he wrote Honey, I'm Good, which became the hit single on his second album, and one of his biggest hits to date. And had he stopped at 100 or 80 or 50 songs or 30 or whatever, he wouldn't have a hit on his second album, and he wouldn't have the career that he has today. And, it's not necessarily all about the hits for every artist, but for him, with what he's trying to do, he knows that it's all about the song for him. And you have to become great at that. And so to become great, it's that Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of putting in the time and the effort and the work is whatever you're trying to do. If you are trying to be a freelance drummer, then you got to be great at the drums, and you have to put in the work, and you have to be one of the best drummers in the market that you're trying to tap into. If you're trying to be a singer and you don't write songs and you don't play any instruments, then you have to be an incredible singer, and you have to be a great singer, and you have to put in the time and the work. So the main mistake that artists make is that they try to start their career before they're ready, and they do not put in the work, and they don't become great, and then they start recording way too early. They start putting their music out way too early, and they start promoting the shows way too early. So there's like an incubation stage that every artist needs to go through, and a lot of times artists are going through this when they're younger, high school, maybe early college, that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, now people see that their peers are kind of starting their careers and starting to have a bit of success. So they think, well, I'm great too. They're friends of mine. So I'm just going to put out my music just like they did. And then, their friends and family aren't going to tell them that they're not ready, that they're not good. Right. And then they get frustrated because they're following, they read all the blogs and they read all the books and they follow the steps and they're like good at the business, and it's just not happening for them. And that's because they have not put in the work to become great first, and then you do all the business things. And if you're great and you do all the business correctly, you will succeed, and you'll succeed a lot quicker. And so if you're disappointed with the speed of your growth, maybe you got to go back into and shed it out a little bit. Maybe you got to go back to the studio. Maybe you got to write 100 more songs, or maybe you got to put in 1,000 more hours of practicing or rehearsing, or maybe you got to play 100 more shows to nobody, and then you hone your craft, and then your career will start to soar.
Right, and there are stories of bands going for years and years. Even in the height of music business and I guess the old music business where they went years and years and they were doing it on their own, like kind of underground, whatever. And then they finally hit the whatever it was that clicked for them. They figured out their sound, their thing that they do, and then a record label picked them up, and then they finally did it. So it's that, but it's the record label was the filter on that. The record label was like waiting for the people to be done. And now you're saying, it's wide open. I mean, it's up to you to decide.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. You're dead on. I mean, that's people realize that, and labels would tell bands this, like, you're not ready yet. Go play 100 more shows.
Right.
And unfortunately, not every band gets that. Not every band gets somebody saying, you're not ready yet. Go play 100 more shows. Go write 100 more songs. And spend 100 more hours in the studio.
Right. Like, and they just get frustrated and give up.
Yeah, exactly.
That is kind of the gatekeeper now, I guess.
Who's willing to stick it out? Who's willing to put in all that time? Yep.
So let's assume that we've taken care of all that. What are the first or most important things a brand new artist should focus on the business side of things?
Oh, sure. Right. So once you get past your music, let's say, yes, that's the baseline. That's basically like where my book starts. And it's kind of like, so once you are great, here are all the business things that you can do. So number one, which is the most important thing that every artist, no matter what level you're at, needs to do for your business. Number one is identify your goals. Just like I was talking about before, there's no one way to make it. And my strengths and weaknesses are different from your strengths and weaknesses. You have to identify your goals. I can't identify goals for you. Do you want to tour? Yes, no, okay, like fine. Doesn't matter either way, but you have to identify your own goals. Is your goal touring, or is your goal performing, or is your goal just being a studio rat? So what are your goals? So that's number one, identifying your goals. And these goals should be concrete, and they should be, I like saying, 6-month goals, 1-year goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals, and really lay them out there. Because that, once you identify what your goals are, and these are specific goals, not just like, I want to be a full-time musician. Like, okay, we all do, like, I want to be successful. Okay, what does that mean? Like, really concrete, specific goals. I would say, like, okay, pick a venue in your local market, and you say, I want to sell that venue out. That's a reasonable goal. And, and you have to be realistic about it. Like, okay, if this is your local arena and you can only draw 10 people to your shows right now, it's not realistic to say, I want to sell out that arena in a year. Like, no, that's not realistic. Right. But if it's a 500 cap venue and currently you're drawing 50 people to your shows and you say, I want to sell that venue out in a year, absolutely realistic. You 100% could do that. And that's a very realistic goal. And that's a great goal. That's a very concrete, specific goal. And you say, I want to sell that venue out in a year. And then you can reverse engineer that goal. It's like, okay, what does it take to sell out this venue? Okay, so there's 500 seats and that's where we have to sell 500 tickets. Currently, my last show, I brought 50 people. Okay, so, we have to 10X that. How are we going to do that? Well, let's, tap into this market and play these promo shows and play these other kinds of shows and promote this way, and we didn't really promote these last shows. No. There's a million different steps that you can take to identify, what's going to work for you and how you're going to promote that show and sell 500 tickets. But it's a very realistic goal. There's like, I want to get songs placed on TV shows. Okay. But let's get more specific about that. In 6 months, I want to have one placement of one of my songs on a TV show. Okay, realistic goal. Now, which TV show? Anyone? No, because not every show it plays your kind of music. So that's where you reverse engineer that. So you say, you identify the goal. Okay, I want my song to be placed on a TV show. Fine, great goal. But now the work that actually you have to do when you reverse engineer that goal is, okay, what are the TV shows that play my kind of music? Because every TV show has their own style of music and their own themes. Right. And you have to see, okay, if you're like a hip hop artist, your songs are not really going to fit on Grey's Anatomy, for instance. Or similarly, if you're like an acoustic artist, your songs don't fit on Empire. So it's kind of, you have to identify identify what are the shows. So that's the work, and that's the you identify the goals, and then you reverse engineer those goals. And so that's step one. And honestly, and you reevaluate these goals. I would say every 6 months, I would write these goals out. And print them off and put them up in your studio, put them up so you can look at them. You're accountable to these goals, and you can look at them and be like, oh yeah, are we on track for these goals? You can always shift your goals. You can check them off and stuff like that, but identify your goals and then you can attack them.
Right. Yeah. And like the benefit that we have is that we're all creative people. That's what we do. Right. So you get creative with how you're going to get these goals accomplished, and like maybe you're finding out what shows play, your type of music. Well, maybe you look up that music. I don't know what it's called. Music director, the guy who picks the music for a show. Supervisor. Right. So you find him, like email him, send him, hey, like I got this music that's right up your alley. You might like it for, one of your shows. So I don't know. I don't even know,
that's yes, exactly right. Exactly. And it's kind of like, right. You find that's part of the reverse engineering the steps is like, okay, exactly. You identified the show and then it's like, oh, well, who places music on the show? That's a music supervisor. Okay. Who's the music supervisor of this show? Let me do some research. Oh, I found the music supervisor. Okay. Now what's, it's Lindsay Wolfington. Okay. What's her email? Oh, well, I got to find her email. Is she on Instagram? Is she on Twitter? Okay. I found those things. Right. Great. This is part of the work. And then what else has she done? Actually, and then on the show that I want to get my music on, maybe check out some of the songs that were played on the show. Oh, I know this band. Cool. Right. That's they're really good. Maybe actually let me hit this band up and be like, hey, how did you get your song on this TV show? Exactly. And then you ask them that. Or sure, you send Lindsay an email and you be like, hey, Lindsay, love the show. Love what you've done with it. The themes, the themes that you've used are really incredible. And I love how you use this song kind of to identify this character. And when this song came on, you really showcase it in a really wonderful way. Compliment them. Right. Remember that there are human beings that are on the other end of every email you send. And I say like every cold email that you send to anyone ever in the music industry should start with a compliment. Yep. It's not about you. It's about them. And also
I was just saying, it also lets them know you're coming from a good place and not a place of like you're just trying to better yourself, or you're not trying to just like greed. Right. Like it's not greedy. It's like, listen, I appreciate what you do. And I would like to know how you learned to do what you do or how you got there, whatever. Well,
and it's also, and it's just showing them respect. It's just saying, hey, I've taken the time to get to know you, because a lot of people will just, and musicians are incredibly guilty of this. I would say musicians are more guilty of this than most others, is they're so focused on themselves and bettering their own career that they forget that everyone is a human being and that everyone has, enjoys being complimented, or everyone has feelings. And so they think like they become desperate and they're like, please help me. And they're going to say, well, I'm going to send 1,000 emails and one of them will give me a response. It's like, well, no, how about just send 10 emails and be extremely intentional about those emails and get to know those 10 people a little bit and do your research and start off the email with a compliment. Say, hey, I really love the music that you placed on this. This is how I discovered the artist Emily King, and she's become one of my favorites because you placed her song "Can't Hold Me" on that last episode of the Royals, and it was like a really awesome placement. It was really cool. Like, well done. I really love the music that you're placing on this show. Thank you for doing such a great job with this. Right. Also, I'm an artist similar to Emily King. I think you dig this song. I think it would fit really well on a show. And here's a link, and I'd be honored to be included. And you link it, but you have to do it in a way that they want. And so that's also, don't attach an MP3 to the email. Either send them like a box link with an MP3, that's fine, but it has to be metadata tagged. And this is also the work. It's like, you don't just want to get their email and send them an email. You have to know exactly what kinds of emails they want. Not just starting off with a compliment. Yes, that's important, of course, but it's also what kind of links are they looking for? This is very specific. Actually, most music supervisors right now want disco links. If you don't know what disco is, that's the work that you got to put in. Right. And it's like, oh, well, how do I send a disco link? Oh, I got to get a disco account. What does this even mean? Or if you're going to send them a box link or a Dropbox link, obviously don't share, like you have to know how to share the links properly so it's accessible by everybody and it's not locked. They don't have to sign into the Dropbox account. They don't have to add it to the Dropbox. And you have to actually send a link with the song that's metadata tagged. If you don't know what metadata tagging is, then that's more work that you have to actually do and figure out. So there's a lot of different steps that you have to go through to actually to become successful with every email or contact that you're trying to make, and that's part of the thing. So these are like the tactics, and I explore a lot of these in the book of like exactly this what I just talked about. Is like if you want to get a song placed on a TV show, here's everything that the music supervisors are looking for, because I've talked to like 50 of them, and then they all start to say the same thing. And I'm like, oh wow, this is actually a key. Like this is actually what is pretty universal across the board for this corner of the music industry. And then you kind of approach it the same way for every corner of the music industry with everything you're trying to do.
Exactly.
And that's why I like your book so much, is because I've read a lot of other music industry books, and you put them down and it's kind of like, more philosophy or that was a good read. But your book I put down inspired with a literal checklist of things that I can do today.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's actionable. It's very, very easy to get started with.
Yeah. We can't recommend the first book enough. And then November 5th will be the first one to get the new book too. So I had a question for you. So as a band or a musician, and you are going to need help. Like there's a lot of things you can DIY and do yourself, and you take on what you can, but obviously there are some things that you're not going to be efficient at. We'll say like a publicist or a booking agent or manager, lawyer. Obviously, you're not going to be a musician and a lawyer, so you're going to have to hire some help. What would you say is the first thing a band or a musician should be looking for as far as like to get their career started? Like what's important to have?
Sure. That's a great question. And that is a very good, accurate point, is that, DIY is a misnomer. No one does it themselves. DIY, do it yourself. No one does it on their own. Even though Forbes called me the poster child of DIY music, I never did anything on my own. Yes, I didn't have a label or a manager or any of those traditional people, but I had friends who helped me out. Like I had a street team helping me hang posters. Like I didn't do that all by myself. I had friends in town that we played shows and that like helped me with some bookings, and I had people help make introductions for me, and so you don't do anything by yourself. But I wouldn't get caught up on any industry personnel that you need. And I think that's another big mistake that musicians make, is that they think that to advance their career, they need a certain music industry personnel, and that becomes their holy grail, and that becomes what they're working towards, and they lose track of their goals. A goal of yours should not be manager. I want a manager.
Right.
That should not be a goal, because that's not a true goal for your career, because you have to go deeper. Why do you want a manager?
Right.
Oh, I want a manager because I want to get on tour and I want to go on tour with this artist, or I want to support this artist, and a manager can help me with that. It's like, okay, your goal actually is you want to go on tour, or you want to be the opening act for this artist. That's your real goal. And so identify your real goals. Goal is not, let me get a manager or let me get a booking agent. Your goal is like, why do I, a lot of our bands are like, oh, my goal is to get a booking agent. It's like, why? Why do you want a booking agent? Oh, well, because I want to go on tour. Oh, well, you don't need a booking agent to go on tour. You can book it yourself, or you can hire people, or you can get friends to help you. So the thing is with industry personnel, and that's why musicians need to change their mindset about what the purpose of these industry personnel are. They are to support your operation. If you don't have an operation, they can't support anything.
Right.
So you have to build up an operation first. Right. Every manager and booking agent that I've spoken with, they say they want to be partners. Managers especially want to be partners. They don't want to be crutches.
Right.
They don't want and managers especially, you have to remember this is a business relationship. So if you don't have a business, they're not going to be able to work on your career, because how are they going to eat?
Right.
They have to get paid, and managers and booking agents, they take commissions of your career. So if a manager, let's say, managers take 15 to 20% of your career, if you're only bringing in $1,000 a month, how are they supposed to eat on $150 to $200 a month?
Right.
Nobody can survive on that. So if you really break it down, it's like, oh wow, I guess, this is a business, and they need to survive too, and pay their own. They need to pay their rent and buy groceries just like me. Oh well, I guess wow. Okay, well, my business is not actually ready to that point. Right. And a lot of artists are like, oh, I want to get signed to a label. It's like, well, no. Why do you want to get signed to a label? Well, because I want to make money from my recorded music, and I want to get 1 million streams. Okay, all right. So that's your real goal. You want to get 1 million streams.
Right.
That's a goal you can approach.
Right.
It's
Don't
a label.
Yourself, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is not that. So, that was a long way of saying I didn't really answer your question of what's the first, industry personnel or the first people that you should be approaching. Honestly, the people that you want to bring on your team are those who are excited about what you're doing, and they don't have to be quote unquote in the music industry. Some of the best managers of all time have been just friends of the artists who didn't really know anything about the music industry, but they were passionate and they were friends of the artist. They really believed in the artist, and they're like, hey, let me help you out. Like, you don't have to pay me now. I know you're not making any money. I have a day job, and I'll do what I can in the time that I can, but I really love you and I really believe in you. And so let me help you out. And these are like the best friend managers. And if you have friends that want to help you out, let them help you out. And that's awesome. And, maybe one will step in as like more or less quote unquote manager role, or maybe they'll just be friends helping out. And that's totally cool too. In different capacities. And so it's like you can look at all your friends and it's like, okay, this friend is great at graphic design. They come to all our shows. They love our shows. It's like we need an album cover, and we don't have a ton of money. Like, let's ask them if they'd be down to help us design an album cover, design our new poster, or help us design the new website, or that kind of stuff. Like, these are all partners and people that you can bring on your team, or at least just like for certain things here and there. You need a video edited. You want to do a music video. Do you have any friends that love your band and are big supporters that are good at video work, that are directors or DPs, or they know how to edit video or shoot video or have artistic eyes, or all of that stuff. So it's really I hesitate to say, well, you need a manager to start your career. That's the first person. Is like, no, what you need is to identify your goals, figure out what you want to accomplish, and then figure out how to do that. And then the support that you need to do that. Like, sure, we're all talented enough and hardworking, and you could learn graphic design if you really put in the hours, the thousands and thousands of hours, and you could design your own shit. But maybe that's not the best use of your time, and it's not the best use of my time. So maybe you need to find a friend or hire someone or go on to 99 Designs or Guru or something like that and pay somebody to design your poster. So they're part of your team too. No one does it on their own. There's no such thing as do it yourself, because I have people design my posters and edit my videos and stuff like that. Also with recording, I know my time is better spent writing songs and performing and working the business than learning how to engineer in Logic or Pro Tools or Ableton or whatever. And that's not what I want to spend my time doing. So I will hire engineers and producers to record my records with. Right. That's also someone on your team. Yeah. And so it's like, one of my goals was I want to record a record, and I know the quality standards that I have, and I know that I can't accomplish that just on my own without putting in thousands and thousands of hours, which I don't really want to do. And so I can hire someone, I'll come up with the money and I'll identify the people that can help me with that. And I'll come up with the money and I'll pay these people to do that for me. Mm-hmm. So there's people you can pay who will believe in your project, like a producer, an engineer, or something like that, or a graphic design artist or a video editor and that kind of stuff to achieve the actual goals you're looking to achieve.
Right. And that kind of goes back to identifying your strengths and weaknesses. What can you do? What can you not do? Where is your money well spent?
And a big one is where do you need
support?
Yes,
absolutely. Yes.
Because I spent a lot of time learning, studio engineering skills because that's something I wanted to do. Right. So that comes in handy later when you can record your own stuff without having to hire a studio. But that's because I wanted to put in that time,
Exactly. It's a strength.
Absolutely.
Too, Yeah.
And that's awesome. And that's your strength. And you've identified that. You put in the work and the time and the effort. And that's fantastic. That's one of your strengths. That's one of my weaknesses. And so that's it's really important to identify those things and understand how you can use your strengths to effectively move your career forward.
And also thinking about strengths and weaknesses, it seems like you could partner with other musicians. Like you just said, your weakness is studio, my strength is studio. There's a potential for partnership with your friends and peers, I guess, especially in your area, but even with the internet, not in your area, that you can then, call on each other to help. Like, hey, I'm good at this. I can help you with this, basically service swap at that point. But
And that's the beautiful thing about the internet. It's like there's a site called SoundBetter. It was actually just acquired by Spotify, but SoundBetter is this platform where you can do just that. It is a musician's marketplace. It's, I need a mixing engineer. I don't know any mixing engineers other than the ones that do the hit records that get paid $5,000 a song to mix. So where can I find good mixing engineers? There's none in my local town that I know. You go on to SoundBetter, you type in mixing engineers, and there's profiles. It's like resumes and profiles with sound examples of tons of mixing engineers from all over the world. Or I need a violinist for this song and I don't know any violin players. You go on there, there's a ton of violinists. Or I need a singer or a drummer. There's drummers on there that can track from their home studio. You send them the files, they'll drum, record, send you the multi-track Pro Tools session or even just the bounced waves or something like that. And then you have drums now. And so it's like, that's so cool. It's a musician's marketplace, and that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had my record mixed on SoundBetter. I think I found from your book, actually. So I appreciate that.
Cool.
Pro tip.
Yeah.
So awesome. How do you feel about censorship and the ability of sites like Instagram, Facebook, that kind of thing, and YouTube as well, to demonetize or even like hide or bury your content?
Yeah, so that is, we have to remember that each platform, they have objectives, and their objectives is to keep people on their platform longer and for a longer period of time and to make money.
Right.
So once you identify what the platform's objectives are and you understand what they are functioning to do, then you can work more in harmony with them and not work against them. Because remember, their objectives are not to help your music career. Right. And so once you I think we get a lot of musicians kind of, get up in arms. It's like, wow, Facebook just changed their algorithm and now none of our fans who liked our post, liked our page, see our posts anymore unless we pay them. It's like, okay, fine. But guess what? Facebook's objective is not to help your music career. This is not what their business model is. So you have to, if you want to use their platform, you have to understand what their business model is and what their objectives are. So I think musicians spend too much time bitching and moaning about how nothing's fair and how little streaming pays and how Facebook and Instagram changed their algorithm again and now no one sees their posts. And it's like, stop bitching. Just figure it out. It's like, okay, you can spend all your time complaining about this, or you could spend your time getting creative about how to utilize the platform effectively to then reach an audience. And so it's like, that's, again, I keep going back to Wolfpack. They're just top of mind because they just sold out Madison Square Garden, and I was like, it's so cool. But like they are like one of the first Facebook bands. They discovered, while everyone was bitching about how Facebook changed their algorithm and you can't reach an audience on Facebook, they're like, we can, and they figured out exactly how to I don't want to say like manipulate the algorithm, but how to use it to their benefit. And like, oh, okay, Facebook is focusing on video right now, and it's less about images or text posts. Okay, so let's focus on video. And they're showing 3 seconds in your feed, and that's going to count a view. Or that's when people are scrolling through Facebook, they're going to autoplay the video. So what's going to be the most compelling, interesting first 3 seconds of the video that we should make? So let's restructure our videos. And so there's not a 15-second introduction of black space because this is an artistic statement that we're trying to make, where the drums are rumbling in on a blank screen because this is like our music video, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, if you want this video to do well on Facebook, the first 3 seconds are the most important. So if your first 3 seconds of your video is a black screen, you ain't gonna get any views. And like, that's just like, you have to identify all these things. So, It's like you look at the radio when you mentioned censorship or something. It's like okay, the Disney Channel radio station, which is one of the most popular radio stations still in the world, Disney Radio, they're not going to play the uncensored Kanye West latest track, or just any Kanye. And it's like, well, Disney's censoring Kanye. No, that's just not their objective. That's not their audience. That's not who they're trying to appeal to. And so it's like that's obvious. Everyone's like, of course Disney's not going to play Kanye. Like, that would be absurd. But if you really break it down, it's just like, yeah, because Disney, that's not their objective. That's not their audience. And so when you really think about that for every platform, it's like, it's not that Facebook is censoring musicians or Instagram is censoring musicians. It's that's what is their objective and who is their audience, and how are you helping this platform achieve their objectives. And if you're not, they're gonna be like, we don't want to fuck with you. We don't need you. Like, right. If you're not going to create the kinds of content for our platform, it's their platform. It's not your platform, it's their platform. Right. And they're like, if you're not going to create the kind of content that we want on our platform, then yeah, you can be on our platform, but we're not going to support you, and we're not going to help you reach an audience.
Right. They're not going to like go advertising your music on the front page if you're not even like on the same mission as them. So like exactly. On YouTube, for example, like they may let you post everything, whatever you want, because, they're an open, semi-open. Mm-hmm. I know there's some stuff that they do actually, sure. Shut down. But if you're even just not on their main message, you're not going to be on their front page, they're not going to do that for you. So I guess what you're saying, let me just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's either, cater to what the platform you're trying to get on, cater to what they're going for, or find a platform that is doing what you're doing and go for that. Exactly. Platform. So one or the other.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you're wanting to, I'm going to use an extreme example, but let's say your music that you're making is meant for porn, and your music videos, you want you said to.
Because I knew you were going there. Because that my first thought, I was like, he's going to say something about porn.
I don't know. Right? Let's talk about porn.
I think Steel Panther actually released a song on Pornhub.
Some people do.
Yeah,
for sure.
Right, exactly. And so it's like, okay, if you want to show naked bodies or people having sex, like YouTube doesn't want that. So you can't release that music video on YouTube, or Facebook or Instagram. So that's not the platform for you. And it's not that like, oh man, they're censoring my art. It's no, that's not what their platform wants on their platform.
Right.
And so it's like, yes, go to another platform, go to Pornhub, or, put the, video file on your own personal website and promote it that way. Like, the internet is open and free. And in America, and you can do this. And it's not that this platform is censoring you. It's just like, that's just not what they want on their platform. That's their prerogative. That's their own decisions. Like, that's okay. This is like, YouTube is not the government. There's no constitution for YouTube. It's their own, it's a company. It's a private company. They can do whatever they want. And so it's like, either you follow their terms of service or you go to a different platform, and that's your own decision.
Yep. Right. So I guess one of the last questions here as we wrap up, how can you avoid losing your fan base on a dying social media platform, kind of like what happened to MySpace? You know what I mean? When you have 30,000 Facebook fans, do you really own those fans?
Right. Yes. That's a great question. That's a great point. The short answer is no, you don't own your fans when your Facebook likes or your YouTube subscribers or your Instagram followers. So the only way to really own your fans is to get their personal contact information, their email, their phone number. Like, that's a way to own your fans, because you're basically renting your fans to a social media platform, and like your Facebook likes, your Instagram followers, you're renting them to Facebook and to Instagram. And if you want to own them, then yes, you need their emails or you need their phone numbers, or both, even better. And so, and that's the thing, like, yes, it's a give and take, because on one hand, you need to go where your fans are. If your fans are on Instagram, then you need to be on Instagram, and you need to, if that's where your fans are, and that's how they want to interact with you. And that's how that's where it's going to be the most fun for them to interact with you. And these are your fans. And again, I don't know who your fans are. And so this is like how you need to identify who are your fans. If your fans are only over 65, you probably don't need to be on Instagram. I don't even have an Instagram account. But like, if your fans are, 17 to 30, you should be on Instagram if you want to connect with your audience. And so it's like, there are some, once you identify like who your audience is, what kind of career you want to have, and what you want to do, then yes, there are some certain rules you need to follow in this time period at this exact moment in time to achieve your goals and objectives. I was saying earlier at the very start of the conversation, if anyone says you have to do this, they're full of shit. Well, yes. However, once you have identified your goals and you say, oh, I want to make music and I want to build a fan base that is, and I've identified my target demographic is 22-year-olds. And I want to build a fan base with 22-year-olds. Okay, now you've identified some concrete goals and objectives. Now you can lay out the roadmap and say, oh, this is what I need to do, and this is how to reach them. So, there's, but to get to your point about one of these platforms could die and then you lose all your fans. Absolutely. And there's a great example. I actually talk about this in the second edition, because when I released the first edition, Vine was still a thing. And I actually talked about Vine a little bit in the first edition. And, once that died, that's like, there were some great lessons learned from that. And one of the lessons was, for instance, like one of my friends, she was a big Viner. She had 300,000 followers on Vine, and she was living high, getting sponsorships, doing Vine videos every day. Like, a lot of her whole career kind of was focusing on how to grow her Vine audience. And, Vine gave a heads up that it was going to shut down, and you could read the tea leaves. It was, starting to slow down a bit too. Unfortunately, she didn't transfer those fans to another platform or really own any of those fans through email or phone numbers or anything like that. And when Vine died, she lost her entire fan base. Same with what we saw with MySpace, right? Back in, 2010, same kind of shit. People built up their audience solely on MySpace. MySpace died. They lost their audience. That could happen with any platform, or it shifts. So Facebook has shifted. The kids aren't really as active on Facebook Facebook as they were 10 years ago. And so again, if you're trying to target teenagers, 20 somethings, like Facebook is probably not the best platform for you. So if you put all of your effort into Facebook, which a lot of us did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and it hasn't died completely, but it has evolved and it has shifted. Mm-hmm. And so, we're like, oh man, Facebook isn't it's not as helpful at us kind of reaching our fans anymore. It has evolved. So other Viners, I noticed on Vine when it was starting to die, they transferred their fans to other platforms and where they wanted to interact with them. And some of them, and so when Vine died, it was no problem for them because they transferred them over to Instagram or they transferred them over to YouTube. And so it's like, yes, you can focus on one platform for the moment, but never lose track of what your ultimate goal is for your music career. And if your ultimate goal is to build a fan base of supporters who will support you for life, that's your ultimate goal. Your ultimate goal is not to get 1 million Instagram followers. That might be part of the journey that enables you to have these supporters that will support you for life. That can be a tool of the moment, and tools change and platforms evolve, and your goals will shift. But the ultimate goal, if your ultimate goal is to build up a fan base of supporters who will support you for your career, then never lose track of that. So maybe Instagram is the best platform for you of this moment. Fine, cool. I always think you should get their emails because you never know what's going to happen. But email is also not fun for fans. They don't want to interact with you over email. Most of them don't. Right. So they want to interact with you on Instagram or wherever, or Facebook if you have an older audience, or YouTube, but you identify how fans want to interact with you and what they want of the moment, and you focus your efforts on that. But you always are one step ahead of the curve, and you're like, okay, how can I make sure that my audience stays with me no matter what? And if I put all of my effort and all my eggs into this one social media platform, if that evolves or if it dies, then I'm SOL. So let me build up a relationship with my audience, a real relationship with my audience, not through Instagram. It can be through Instagram, but it's not a relationship with Instagram. It's a relationship with your audience. And maybe Instagram currently is the tool that you're going to use. And that's going to be the medium of how you're going to connect with your audience right now. And that's fine. What you're really doing is building a relationship with your audience. And so your audience will then follow you wherever you go. And the thing is with Vine, and my friend who built up her audience on Vine, they weren't really a huge fan of hers. They were a fan of Vine, and they got value on Vine from following her account and seeing her Vine videos, but they didn't really care as much about her. And that's the other thing is like, yes, you can play the game. We didn't really touch on this today, when that's totally okay. You can check out the book, but with Spotify playlists, a lot of artists are like, I want to get on a Spotify playlist. It'll bring me 1 million streams. And it's like, yeah, but okay, it might bring you 1 million streams, but those aren't fans. They're fans when they listen to you on Spotify or a playlist. They're not really becoming fans of the artist because of that playlist. They are fans of the playlist, just like people are fans of Vine or people are fans of Instagram. And when you're on that platform and you're listening to that playlist, you are listening to the playlist, or you're on this platform and it's bringing you value in that moment. And you don't really necessarily maybe not care about the individuals behind these videos or the songs or anything like that. So yes, at the end of it all is identify your goals and yes, try to own your audience, but it's really build that authentic relationship with your audience, and they will follow you for life.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things I took away from the book. The first thing I started doing after reading the book was actually, when I got to that part of the book, even I was make an email list and put it out at all the shows and start collecting emails rather than just trying to get people to follow us on Instagram because obviously it's such a. I mean, I didn't even thought of it actually before reading the book, and when I heard it, I was like, you know what, that could be a huge setback. right there. And I think a lot of people should do that. And I started telling other people to do the same thing too, other bands, and they started seeing the same way. And obviously I tell them about your book, and a couple of them have actually read it and got back to me and loved it. So
yeah.
Cool,
so November 5th, How to Make It in the New Music Business, 2nd edition, available everywhere.
2nd edition.
Yeah,
yes,
man.
and you can actually pre-order it right now. So we're actually pushing the pre-order. And so if you're listening to this before November 5th, go pre-order. And we got a bunch of bonuses if you pre-order. I'm like trying to incentivize for people to pre-order it so we can bump the charts. And so, pre-order it, and then we'll send you a bunch of bonuses.
Yeah. Awesome. Speaking of the power of an email list, I'm on yours. And when I saw the pre-order bonus, I didn't even read the email. I just bought it immediately. And,
Dope, amazing.
And so there you go. That's email list equals money in your pocket. So I'm super excited to dig into the companion workbook, for example, and that kind of stuff. So I can't wait for the book. I know Matt can't wait for the book. Ari, is there anything you'd like to add as we wrap up here?
No, it's great. Thank you for having me. It was a really interesting conversation. So I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Can't thank you enough. This hour plus has just been the tiniest of examples of the quality content that's in this book. So
exactly.
I can't wait to dig into it.
If you're listening to this and you're hearing things that you've never heard before, you should go read that book, because there's probably 100 other things you've never heard before. Yeah. There's so much information in the book.
Cool.
Thanks, Ari.
Well, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for listening, and see you next week on the Musicians Talk Show. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. For more episodes,